There's so many great topics for us to touch on. If we can just cover, what is your take on, let's say, Bitcoin versus the altcoin market? And do you feel like anything has changed in your perspectives in the past 3-4 years on that? Or do you still feel like there's a clear separation between those assets?
Yeah, so I mean, you can break it down by a bunch of different perspectives. So first start with the technology itself. I believe that Bitcoin is the only truly decentralized technology. Now, everyone in this industry is very focused on the word decentralized. It's almost become like this marketing term, right? But you have to remember, decentralization has trade-offs. It's not good or bad. If Amazon was decentralized, that would be horrible for their business, right? Amazon's all about efficiency and being able to quickly deliver something. It still amazes me. I can press a button on my phone so they can show up, literally hours later. And so Bitcoin being decentralized is because it's specifically optimizing for security, censorship resistance, et cetera. There's many other technologies that people are building where they're basically trying to use the idea of decentralization, but still capitalize on efficiency, speed, low cost, et cetera. Now, Bitcoin believes that you can do that on other layers, so layer 2, layer 3. Some of these other technologies came out and they said they were going to do it on a layer 1. So I think that that's probably one of the biggest differences is that Bitcoin is actually decentralized. The creator is unknown. I saw somebody joking on Twitter yesterday. They're like, the SEC is going to send a cease and desist to the creator of Bitcoin, but they can't find them. Again, haha, right? Got it. But like it's highlighting this point of it is definitely different, right? The second is on the regulatory front. It appears that the SEC, CFTC here in the United States, but also regulatory bodies around the world have all said Bitcoin is not a security. Everything else is. Now, whether that actually ends up being the final verdict or not, there's a number of companies, Binance, Coinbase, and others that are going to go and kind of have their day in court. I don't know, right? And I think that it's always been this like unknown risk. The community identified it early and they've been debating it for years. At some point, we're going to get that answer. Maybe it's next year, maybe it's 10 years from now, but at some point we'll find that out. But I do think that Bitcoin is kind of past all those filters on the regulatory front. The third thing is currently Bitcoin has really been the only asset where institutional investors have warmed up to allocating to it. There's been a couple, I think, publicly announced institutions that have also bought Ether or Ethereum, but those are pretty few and far between. And then pretty much almost everything else has been ignored by the institutional world. Some people will argue, oh, that's because they're newer and give it a couple of years and institutions will go buy that stuff too. Some people argue, no, it's because it's not actually worth anything and they're going to completely ignore it. Again, I don't know what will happen there, but I do know that Bitcoin has kind of crossed over and now is seen as one of these institutional assets. And you see that not only with public companies like MicroStrategy and others putting it on their balance sheet, Tesla, et cetera, but you also see a lot of large financial organizations building technologies around this. I mean, Fidelity Investments is a massive, company with over $1 trillion of assets. They have a whole dedicated team to building all of this stuff and building technologies and custody and trying to help people get onboarded, et cetera. And then what you see is, I don't think we've ever heard a major macro trader, Stanley Druckenmiller, Paul Tudor Jones, Bill Miller, et cetera, talk about anything other than Bitcoin. And again, does that mean that they don't hold the other stuff? Maybe. Does it mean that they don't yet feel comfortable talking about it? Does it mean that maybe they're worried about regulatory risk? I'm not sure. But what it does say to me is, again, Bitcoin seems to kind of have passed over this threshold and be in kind of a different category to some degree. So when I look at those three things, I say to myself, okay, well, those are like positives for Bitcoin. What's the downside argument? And it depends on who you're talking to. If I go and I talk to somebody on Wall Street who runs a hedge fund or a big family office, many of them think that Bitcoin is the single most risky thing that they could invest in, right? They don't even look at the rest of the market, but they just look at Bitcoin and they're like, okay, I got my stocks, my bonds, maybe some commodities, real estate, whatever. This Bitcoin thing is crazy. I'm going to put 0.5%. And so if you then go talk to like a 22-year-old, crypto degen, they're like, dude, you hold Bitcoin? Like Bitcoin is by far the like boomer coin, right? It's like the least risky thing. Why are you buying that? And so I've for years now said like, that's actually where I want to sit. I want to hold the asset that is riskiest to the most conservative people. And I want to hold the asset that is safest to the riskiest people. So it kind of sits right there in the middle. Now, what that means is, yes, if you're looking for the absolute highest potential return and you don't care about risk, then sure, go speculate on, whatever latest coin is, whatever. I just think that that's no different than going and buying penny stocks or, doing anything else in financial markets. If you're instead looking at it from a risk-adjusted standpoint, I think that Bitcoin probably provides one of the best opportunities across all financial markets. And so when you look at Bitcoin's performance compared to stocks or other assets, it's down right now from the all-time high. And there's a lot of people on Wall Street who will point and say, see, you idiots, I told you. If we go back to the start of the pandemic, though, Bitcoin is up over 300%. And so this argument that Bitcoin was going to serve as this inflation hedge, right? Plenty of people in the kind of Bitcoin and crypto world said it, but Paul Tudor Jones, Stanley Druckenmiller, et cetera, said it as well. It seems to have worked. And so when you see that, you're like, okay, well, the next time that we start to see inflation rising, is the playbook learned, right? And if that's the case, instead of there being tens of billions of dollars allocated as there was in 2020, 2021, and into 2022, next time is it hundreds of billions of dollars. Again, maybe it's just we're all biased and we kind of look at it through that lens. But I do tend to think that what we have seen is Bitcoin in any moments of cracks in the legacy financial system seems to serve as a flight to safety. And so whether it's a banking crisis, inflation, debt default, et cetera, it becomes pretty interesting when you're like, hey man, there's not a lot of those people holding that asset yet, but if they start to, things change.